So, Tony, very pleased to be here today with you to talk about American Eagle. It has been, a labor of love and one of the few bright spots in an otherwise very challenging market. So, as we are underway with this drill program that is fully funded by Teck, tell me a little bit about, how did Teck get interested and what did they see ultimately?
Yeah, good question, Steve. So after our first drill hole, results came out November 7th, 2022. We received inbounds from 4+ major mining companies wanting more information on our project. Teck was, very aggressive and really liked, the location of where we were and the fact that we were hitting such high grades from the top. They also really liked the team that were involved with Charlie Gregg and Neil Prowse. So, from there we signed an NDA and they got right into the data room, and they were looking at data, working with our team, going to site, looking at our core over the next 6 months. And that's great for investors because investors have almost 1,000 different mining companies to look at in the TSX venture and very limited time to understand the companies, the results, etc. Geology is very difficult for people that don't have a geology degree. And Teck's an expert. They've brought a lot of great projects to production, have a great track record of exploration successes. And the fact that they put 6 months in, they gave it the thumb of approval, really gave a lot of credibility to our project, to the whole market out there. And we worked with them. Even in the middle of that Glencore deal, we were afraid, maybe a deal wouldn't happen. But they felt so positive and excited about our future program and the results we had in 2022 that they decided to do the investment. And, the rest is history. Stock's done really well ever since. And I believe we should have results that back that up.
Yeah, well, look, I think they certainly know what they're doing. There's probably no better name that we wanted to get involved with American Eagle at this stage. They came in at very favorable terms, but I think they saw something different. That's why they got let's call it like I see it. I mean, there's about half a dozen copper gold porphyries in BC and that are sort of in our call it peer group. None of them are economic right now. I mean, they're sort of lower grade calls on the price of copper, and they take a while to develop. Those are the facts of copper gold porphyries. However, they are going to be major suppliers of this metal. But I think, bias, of course, but a few things set us apart, despite us being early days. I mean, and it's the fact that we've got mineralization right at surface. Look at the other 6 copper gold porphyries. They don't start right at their ankles. We do, particularly in the South Zone. 2 is infrastructure. You can drive to this thing, and we're not in the Rocky Mountains. It's nice and easy to get to. And then, of course, I think what everybody's really talking about in our project, certainly those in the know, is the bornite. I mean, that gets us exciting. And for those who don't know, bornite is a copper mineral, but it has a lot more copper by weight than, say, chalcopyrite, we got a lot of chalco as well. So, what are your thoughts on that, on how we set ourselves apart? Because you really just don't want to be a huge system. We're a huge system, but we got to find a way to juice it up. And maybe it's that bornite that has the opportunity to really set us apart.
Yeah, the fact that we're hitting pretty much everywhere that we drill. Well, you got to realize, Stevens, last year we drilled along a fence. We had limited ability to do step outs. We had to drill where there was already cut blocks of trees, and we drilled mostly vertical holes, so we didn't really have a good understanding of really how this deposit was shaped. So we drilled along a straight line, and we really did hit on every hole. They weren't the crazy grades on some of the holes, but the fact that we hit everywhere really shows that this really is a giant system. And the fact that we hit at surface, in the middle, and at depth really shows the potential of it. So that's really exciting. You mentioned the bornite. We also have chalcocite. So bornite's about 2/3 copper. Chalcocite's a little bit over 8% copper for weight. So absolutely amazing. Again, you said location. That really is the most important thing. With all the benefits that we have, again, being in Canada, being in a place where you can get permits a lot faster, come to production. I'm not worried about losing that mine. Also, the fact that we have great location, a lot less capital down the line when someone wants to make a building decision. So all those things play into Teck's hands, and that's why they invest us in the first place. And I want to emphasize, last year our first hole is drill hole 2201, it's called, and from the top we hit over 1% copper equivalent, a lot of gold there too in the first 130 meters. But we went vertically down, and we had a bit of a moderate zone of not such high copper, and we hit high grade again. But what we did this year is we did a step out about 65 meters to the east. We drilled a westerly hole and a 61 incline. And why that really changed the game for us, it completely opened up that south gold zone. We thought that was a pretty shallow, copper gold rich zone. But when we drilled that at the incline, we actually got to a depth of, over 700 meters and a step out of 400 meters. And it looked like we hit mineralization all the way throughout. And that really builds the scale into that south copper gold zone, which we didn't think was going to be as big of a scale footprint as the north zone, just more of a high grade. But it looks like we have a big area there as well. And what we're trying to figure out is, does this north copper zone, does the south copper gold zone, and this new southeast zone, south of intrusion, are these all one huge zones together, and can we tie them together? And that's what we're really interested to look at. And right now our strategy is to keep on doing these inclines in the south copper zone to build out that high grade scale that we think is there. And again, we're going to show some visualizations of holes 9 and 10 to show that we really are hitting things. What we have here really could be colossal.
So let's talk a little bit about what we did last year. Really, last year, what we did is by and large define 2 dimensions. We drilled, most of the holes were sort of were north-south, and then by and large vertical. We did, some dip on some of them. We had a couple east-west, but not a lot. So what we did there is define about 800 meters of strike north-south, and then we drilled down to about 900 meters of depth. What I think is really interesting was what hole 8 did, which is the first hole of this campaign, and which we had originally planned for 300 meters, but we just couldn't stop drilling it. Right? We went down to 880 meters, if I recall. What that did was that just totally drilled across the strike and gave us almost 450 meters of western lateral strike, which gives us that third dimension, which is what you're trying to do when you're putting together a resource. And again, we emphasize, visuals look encouraging, but we have no idea what the assays are, and you can always be surprised. But it was certainly encouraging for us enough for us to continue with that hole. So that's hole 8, and I think that's great news. And now tell us a little bit about hole 9. So that hole 9 was drilled way off to the east, and I see some people calling it the Tech Prouse hole and whatnot. But what's the thesis behind that hole? But it's because it's way out there.
So that whole area has never really been drilled. It's 800 meter step out from, the area where we drilled last year, 2201, to the southeast. It's in no man's land. I think the closest drill hole historically to that was half a kilometer away, and it was still a shallow hole. So it's really a shot in the dark. There's a needle in the haystack. When you're in exploration, you always expect, to hit nothing. When you hit something, you're really happy, and especially in that area where there's been really no work before. And we drilled and we hit mineralization right off the top. I think 19 meters in, we started to hit mineralization. And throughout the hole, we saw, decent mineralization, which shows us there is copper in this area. There's definitely an ore body there. And we just need a little bit further exploration to find that high grade zone. Again, assays and visualization don't always correlate, but we're cautiously optimistic. And, we proved the proof of concept is that this mineralization extends to the east. And by the way, you mentioned that hole 8, which went across on the 61 incline, that westerly area where we drilled is all virgin land. I believe we got to 881 meters. We're mineralization all the way through the end there. So we're also open to the west. So hole 10 is actually going to be a north step out on the same incline to build scale north-south and again to the west. But what we're going to do, again, hopefully for hole 11, is do a westerly step out on the same incline to continue to build scale, continue to discover that virgin ground to the west, and build something pretty large in the South Copper Gold Zone, which we didn't think actually would have the scale that the North Copper Zone seems to have from our drilling last year.
Okay, so where we're at in the program, we've drilled this year, we've drilled holes 8, 9, and 10. We've got visuals available. They look encouraging. We strongly emphasize we have no idea what the grades are. And also, it's also worth mentioning that that the gold is very hard to spot, if at all. So it's really all we're going on is visualizations of copper minerals, whether it be chalco, moly, but we can see moly too, which is good. You always want to see moly. And going back onto your comment, whether these all zones, if it is one system, I mean, to me, it's clear it's one system. but whether you can connect the dots and do so by delineating a deposit that is economically extractable. So, like this is one system, whether we're in the south, the north, or this Tech Prouse situation, or what we're drilling over the west, it's huge. I mean, from a strike east-west, north-south standpoint, it's a very, very large system. We know it goes to depth. The question is, ultimately the grades and can we string it together? So it is early days. We got 10 holes in this, but virtually every hole has been pretty interesting. And so what's the plan going forward? How many more holes do we have? How many more meters do we have? And what's the general time frame?
Yeah, we've budgeted for around 7,000 meters. We're gonna be drilling till late October. We're gonna put news out. Our core right now, we put the core out first, on our website. We deem that to be material. Our stock did start to move after that. So any future core photos that you see, they're going to be in a news release. We're going to comment on news. We don't like to get involved in too much speculation, but we're very positive about what we're seeing so far. We're going to continue to drill. We're getting really good meterage rates. It's a great time of year to be in BC to drill. So keep on building on this and hopefully try to understand what direction this ore body is angled, where it is, and start to get really into the heart of the zone. Historically, they drilled in the smoke. I think this year we have very good potential to drill in the fire.
Sounds good, Tony. Well, look, I'm excited, and I wish you good luck. You're doing a great job, and I guess the message to shareholders is, we're busy at work. News is coming. We're happy to talk about it when it comes out. There's a lot of anticipation, and if there's any further questions, you make yourself available always.
Steve, remember this, all great deposits, all great ore bodies, they have one thing in common, they're unique. And what we have is great geology. We have a great team, Charlie, Greg, Neil Prouse. We're involved in GT Gold, helped discover that. We have a great partner in tech, probably one of the best mining companies in the entire world to give you credibility. And we're going to keep on drilling. The only way to get sustainable value and shareholder growth in the exploration business is put the money in the ground to drill, to make that discovery. And I'm looking for a 10, 20, 100x. So I'm not happy where our price is right now. We want to continue to grow it. And we're going to do that by making a discovery. So stay tuned.